Okay. Good morning, Shirley.
Yes.
This is Anna Segal, and I have the pleasure of talking with Shirley Coff this afternoon. It's August 3rd, 2023, about 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So, thank you for agreeing to talk with us.
When did I first agree? That was you asked me. You're going to have to speak a little louder because it's hard to hear.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I will try to speak louder. So, Shirley, can you tell me, did you grow up in Dallas?
No, I was actually born in Kansas City, Missouri, to my mother, who was Esther Einhorn, Milton Einhorn, my dad. I had a brother, Harold, and a sister, Rita. And I grew up there all through my high school years. My dad bought a store in Springfield, Missouri. And in that interim, I didn't want to live in Springfield. That's where the store was. It was a small town, and I was not used to a small town. And there wasn't too many Jewish families or kids. I think there was one close to my age. So I decided to come to live with my grandmother in Dallas. I had spent many summers with her. I used to spend all my summers actually with her. I used to come down since they moved here, and I was about 8 years old with my first trip. And I lived here through the polio season. Not lived with her, I mean, I visited with her during the polio season, and then I'd go back home and go to school. Age-wise, I can't really tell you after that. I just knew that I didn't want to live in Springfield. So I moved to Dallas, and my folks actually moved here too. So we lived on Stephanie. No, Tulip. We lived on Tulip. So I spent my single years from 25. I got married to my husband, who was a blind date. And we started going together, and at the same time, my brother had met, the only girlfriend I met here at the time was Feldman, Shirley Feldman. And I was going to introduce them together, during that Christmas. And she said, well, I'm going away to New York, but I'll be back. And I said, okay, good. Well, in that space of time, my brother met a girl here, Sheila Kaufman, and Shirley met her husband in New York. So I really never got to introduce them, although I liked Shirley very much. We did not remain friends. Of course, I think she moved to New York. So I knew the family, though. I kept there with Rosemary and her brother. I can't remember his name right now. And my life began here in Dallas with Leo Coff. And I had 3 children with him. Rhonda, the baby, Jerry, the middle one, and Tina, the older.
So tell me about your grandparents.
My grandparents came here when as I said, I was about 7 or 8. They moved here. My grandfather decided to go into business with a partner. Oh gosh, now I can't remember his name, but it may come to me. And they started a business. He was going to do the clothes making, and the other guy was going to do the selling. Well, it really didn't work out, but they remained here in Dallas. He became a tailor, and they lived on Pennsylvania Avenue. And from there, I think they moved to, I can't remember.
So were your
But they made their home here. I mean, they made their friends. My grandmother made mountains of friends.
So were your grandparents born in the United States?
No, my grandmother came from Poland. My grandfather came from Russia. On that side of the family, that was my mother's side.
And on your father's side?
On my father's side, my grandmother was from Austria, and I guess my grandfather was also from Austria, because they brought him over first, and then they brought her over. They must have had sponsors in those days, because she had a first cousin. No, it was her sister. Her sister lived in St. Joe, Missouri. and then they moved to Kansas. They moved from my dad was born in St. Joe, and then they moved to Kansas City, where he met my mother. So that's how we came to Kansas City.
Okay, so both your parents were born in this country. Both your
my parents were, yes.
Okay, and it sounds like they lived in Missouri most of the time until one set of grandparents moved to Dallas.
Yes.
So what was Dallas like when you came here for the summers? What did you do when you visited your grandparents?
As I said, my grandmother had friends in the area, so there was one little girl, Frida Benson, whose son became Robbie Benson. I used to play with her. My mother would run after me to drink milk as I went to play with her. And then there was Shirley. She was known as Shirley Quince. I can't remember her maiden name. But I played with her and lived around the corner from the tailor. So those are the two girls I remember most, Shirley Quint and Frida Benson. And I grew up with them in the summertime. One summer the other, but I used to get a suntan and go home looking like a little Mexican.
So in a way, Dallas was your second home.
Yes.
Okay. And then you said you moved to Dallas with your parents, or maybe a little before your parents?
I came here and lived with my aunt Martha Stoller for a while, but I went back to school. I lived with my grandmother and I lived with my aunt here in Dallas. But my second home was here. I was always coming back to Dallas from one reason or another, because I didn't like Springfield. I stayed in Springfield maybe one summer, but I didn't have enough friends to stay with, keep me there. And I was of dating age, and so it wasn't anybody to date. So it was really either Dallas or Dallas.
So how did you meet your husband?
I met him on a blind date. My aunt Martha Stoller fixed us up on a blind date, and she kept telling me something with Town and Country, and I was thinking of the restaurant, Town and Country Restaurant. No, that was not it. But she kept it cool. She just kept saying Town and Country. So we went out, and then we went out from then on.
Oh, nice, nice. So what year were you married? Do you remember?
Yeah, 1955. 55, I was 30 years old. I was 25, I was born in 30.
So what was the family business? Was your husband in business?
No, he wasn't in business. Town and Country, he was Town and Country photographer. My dad kept the store in Springfield for many years. He used to travel back and forth, he would commute, but because he moved here to live. He never really liked Dallas, as it was too hot. But as a young man, he actually did work on the railroad in Dallas area, but it was just for a short time.
Okay. And your husband, did your husband have a business in Dallas?
He was a photographer.
Oh, he was the photographer.
He had
okay.
Town and Country Photography, and he sold coupons, door-to-door coupons. So I lived with my parents for 2 years, had 2 babies, and I thought it was time to get out. So I then moved out. We moved to a house on Marsh Lane. And I went through the kids' primary years. I know I moved, Rhonda was still the baby, and she went to, I think she went to Preston Hollow. So the schools then became Preston Hollow and Hillcrest and Franklin. And I lived in Stephanie for a long time.
Okay.
They went to college, so in Stephanie.
So were you working when your children were young?
I did not work at first. I was going to retire. I am a bookkeeper by accident. So it just circumstances made me have to go back to work. So I went back to work, and I started working for my brother-in-law. He was a pharmacist. And through the pharmacy, I got a bookkeeping job, and I worked for him for many years. So that's, I feel like I worked all my life.
Well,
I'm still going to work.
You're still going to work.
I'm still going to work. I go to work 2 days a week for my son.
Oh, really? Doing bookkeeping?
Yeah.
Okay, and what kind of business are
He's a salesman's rep. My husband then became a salesman rep after the photography folded up. That sort of business sort of died. It went its way, and then he went to selling for a friend of his, and then he finally got into the children's business at the Apparel Mart on Stemmons Boulevard, and he was there when the place opened, and he was there when the place closed. And he was being a salesman till the end of his life.
Okay, so you're still doing bookkeeping.
I'm still doing bookkeeping.
Okay. So what do you remember about the Jewish community in Dallas? Were you involved in that community?
My grandparents were not. I mean, they have friends who were Jewish. All their friends were Jewish, but for some reason, I never really spent any time in a center or anything. My time at a Jewish community center was in Kansas City. They had a big one, and we used to go there for lots of activities, dances and things they used to have at the community center. Dallas, not so much. I can't remember because I really wasn't involved.
And when your children were growing up?
They were involved, but I still was not really involved. They had their activities and their avenues because all their friends were Jewish. I mean, it was my way of life, was Judaism, and to make a friend was to make Jewish friends. I had some Gentile friends, but it was through school. And they were just school friends. And that's the way it remained.
So did you celebrate the holidays at home?
I remember we celebrated Christmas until we moved to Dallas. And my mother had a Christmas tree for my brother because he wanted a Christmas tree. And this was probably, I don't know what year, but we're still young enough to appreciate presents. And he wanted a tree. And then my aunt, Martha Stoller, who was married to my mother's brother, got so upset that we didn't have Hanukkah. But I didn't know Hanukkah was in Sunday school, but that's all I knew of Hanukkah. I knew the high holidays. My dad used to go. My grandmother was very religious on my dad's side. She kept kosher. And I learned a lot there on that side of the family, but my grandmother did not live long. She was already old when I was little. So I didn't get too much of Judaism there except for kosher, a little bit of that, and Sunday school. I went to Sunday school. But after graduating high school, we went to, as I said, my life began here in Dallas as far as Jewishness because my grandparents here knew from nothing. I mean, my grandmother, I know, came from a kosher home. But she never followed anything. And my grandfather, I think, was already reformed. He deserted the Russian army to come here by way of England. And I know he wanted to forget it all, or he was put behind him. So there was not much of the Jewish, except for friends. They always had Jewish friends. Their home, their family were Jewish. I didn't meet a single person that wasn't Jewish through my grandparents.
I think that's not unusual.
I guess they still were Jewish in their hearts, but practicing they were not.
Right. So that's interesting about your grandfather escaping the Russian army.
Yes, he was. His brother was drafted into the Russian army, and he says, "You're married. I'm not. I'll go in your place." So he did, and I don't know how long he was in the army, but he decided he didn't want to be in the army, so he escaped through. And then I think he lost track of his family because he didn't want them to find him. So I have very little history of that family, really. I have more history of my other grandparents.
Yeah. Wow. So let me ask you, do you remember anything? Of course, you were very young, but do you remember anything about some of the things going on in the world, like World War II?
I do remember a little bit. I mean, I remember my mother helping out with having soldiers over for holidays and helping out. That way I met one that went to Japan. After the war, I met his brother. He was a nice man. I was young though. I really wasn't. I just remember. I remember the money, the ration stamps. My mother had a brother in the army, and she would send him boxes of stuff. And I remember her packing up the cigarette rations and all that. Because we were in the grocery business, so she had access to whatever she could to send to him.
Okay, so your family was in the grocery business.
Yes.
Was that in Springfield, or when they came to Dallas?
No, that was when my dad's dad was a haberdashery. They called it a haberdashery in St. Joe, Missouri. And my dad really wanted to be an accountant, but his father was not well, so I think he had to go into the family business in St. Joe, and then he moved to Kansas City to a grocery store, a corner grocery store. So I grew up with a corner grocery store.
Well, that's good. You always have some food.
I said that. I said we always ate. I may not have had a lot of stuff, but I always ate.
So who is the oldest relative that you remember?
Well, I remember both sets of grandparents. I remember my grandfather Einhorn, sister, Aunt Fanny. I guess they would be about the same age though. And I remember my grandmother's sister, Aunt Boladina, who lived in Argentina. My grandmother lost her parents young. She came to this country when she was about 15. So I remember the cousins, which I would be about the same age. So I guess that would be the same age I remember is at my grandmother's age.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, so you met your husband, and his last name was Coff, which is your last name. Do you know anything about his family?
No, he actually did not. He claimed he didn't have any relatives, but when we went to Israel on a group trip, we did meet some relatives. They had come from Russia. But that's the only cousins, and that's the only set of cousins that I remember. I don't know. His father also came from deserting the army. I don't remember much about his family because I didn't have much to meet. I did meet his brother and sister. Past that, I cannot tell you. Just the cousins, which was the same. I would say the same age as him. And that's about all I can remember. Know about him.
Right. So the last name is Coff, C-O-F-F.
It was actually changed from Shutkoff.
Oh, I was going to ask you what it was.
His original name was Shutkoff. Shutkoff.
So did your husband change the name?
No, his dad did when he was already born, but they changed his name and made it Shutkoff. Made it Coff.
Coff. Oh, okay. All right. So I understand that you are now a great-grandmother. That you are a great-grandmother.
Yes, I am only a great-grandmother.
So you told us that you have 3 children.
Yes.
Do they all live in Dallas?
Yes. I'm very fortunate they all live here. One has 3, one has 2, and another one has 3. But I only have 2 girls out of the 8 grandchildren.
Okay.
And one of them is not ready to get married, and one just got married a couple years ago and had my first great-grandchild.
Okay. So that's special.
It is. It is special. I waited a long time for that.
Right, 4 generations of females, right? 4 generations of females.
Yes. Well, my mother had 4 generations too. They married young. My grandmother married at 16. My mother married at 16, and my sister did marry young. She married at 18. I married old.
So, does your family in Dallas get together? Do you celebrate holidays together here?
With my immediate family, yes, and with my sister-in-law's daughter, Elaine. She's been a member of the family since born. She also has a brother, Joey.
So you have some extended family. You're a clan here in Dallas.
Yes.
That's really nice. So did you have any pictures or anything that you wanted to show us? Did you have anything? I don't know.
Well, I have and this will be more of an interest to somebody. This is my mother and her baby brother.
Oh, can we bring it a little
You
closer?
can have it. That's a Jack Stoller and Esther Einhorn Stoller.
Oh, nice, nice.
This is the 4 generations that my mother just passed several years back. It's my grandmother, my mother, myself, and my daughter, Rhonda.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's very special. Okay. So let me ask you before we finish, how would you like to be remembered? What would you like?
I hope as a good mother, grandmother, wife. I hope I did a good job on all those 3 levels.
Well, knowing your daughter
I
wrote,
enjoyed them.
knowing your daughter Rhonda, I could say that you've been a success.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop it now. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Was there something we missed that you think would be important?
I don't know. As I say, I can't remember names. That's the bad part.
Well, I think you gave us a good picture of your life, how you grew up in Missouri, spent your summers here. It sounds like you always felt at home here in Dallas.
Oh yeah, I remember living in the back of the store. My grandparents lived in the back of the store. So bathrooms were not a thing of their future. I would take a bath in a tub. I'll never forget that. I was young. I was probably between the ages of 8 to 10, taking a bath in a big tub.
Was that with your grandparents in Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good memory.
Yeah, I enjoyed bringing my grandparents. I mean, they were, my grandmother especially she liked people. And she had friends and friends and friends. She loved to cook. She used to make a filter fish and sweets. I remember for the bar mitzvah, my brother's bar mitzvah, she made sweets here in Dallas and brought them to Kansas City. But they were always fighting. It was a marriage made in hell.
Mm.
It's just one of those things that, what would I say, it was an impulse marriage. I think my grandfather was struck with my grandmother, though. She was beautiful, she was young. She was waiting on the corner for a bus, and he saw her from a store, window or on the street. I think he was really struck with her, but she just was not what he'd wanted in a wife.
Mm.
And they fought forever.
That's sad. Yeah.
It was sad for them. I mean, it really was sad. I don't think we all remember a time that they weren't yelling at each other.
Mm.
And my grandfather did a little yelling, but there were times he had to yell back. In other words, to be heard.
But it sounds like they were good grandparents
They
to
were
you.
good grandparents. My mother, remember her dad very much, is a good parent. My mother, not so much. She was too busy growing up. She was too busy trying to find the better things in life. Because she was young
Yeah.
when she had my mother. But I think she was always that way because she just was always getting about, you know, going somewhere, doing something. Anyway,
Well, thank you for
we
sharing.
had a flowerful beginning.
Yeah, but thank you for sharing that. It's a wonderful story, and you have a lot to show for your life. Beautiful family.
You're welcome. You have to take it apart, huh?